Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. About 4 days ago I started working on this Ficus religiosa that I'm going to be giving to Connor. I pruned down the top of the tree and today I'll be repotting it. Generally on a tree with a nice radial root base, the cross section of the trunk stays nice and round because it's all being fed equally by all the roots that surround the trunk. On this tree you can see there's quite a bulge on this side, so there must be a lot of roots on this side of the trunk. On this side of the tree you can see the trunk comes down and then there's not a smooth transition from the trunk to this root. So we can try and work on that. On this side of the tree there's kind of a belly button here, a root that looks like it was cut off and it's regrowing some new smaller roots off of the cut point. So that can be fixed also. Just by looking at the trunk of the tree, I can tell that there's a lot of issues to sort out with the root base. So let's get the tree out of the pot and begin the work. Alright, I'll try and remove the tree from the pot now. Oh, it's loose. I might have to scrape around the edge a bit. I don't know how much of a lip this pot has, but it has a little bit of a one. I'll just have to break up this back edge a bit so I can get it out. Try that, lifting it from this back edge first. Wow, it's really doesn't want to come out. There we go. It's coming now. Okay, it's coming now. There we go. All right. Yeah, so that pot does have quite a lip. I left the soil quite dry, so it makes it a little easier for repotting. So I'll begin raking out the roots, starting at the center, raking outwards. Now I should get a tray under here. All right, I've got a tray underneath, so now I can rake the roots out without making too much of a mess. Some nice moss developing on the surface there. I can't remember if this tree has ever been on the channel before. Maybe it has, but I don't think it's ever had its own video. It certainly is very dry. So this tree was in the basement where it was quite cool. And I've brought it up recently and pruned off the top, and now I'm repotting it. So the tree should have a lot of vigor in it, and it should recover really quickly. All my other trees that I brought up from the basement have done that. They've kind of exploded in vigor once they're brought up into the warmth here. So I expect this tree to do the same. And when I say explode in vigor, some of them have really exploded. I'll show you a few. Here's my Natal ficus, and you can see how it's just exploded with new growth since I brought it up into the plant room. My asparagus fern has dozens of new shoots just bursting out all over it. My Natal ficus was brought up from the cold room, repotted, and now it's exploding with this vigorous growth all over the tree. I'll continue working on the roots now. Lots of fine roots in this soil, that's good. I think I'm going to give it a misting just to keep those fine root hairs moist. Well, that should help them. Lots of roots going the wrong directions here. Even though I'll be giving this tree away to Connor, it doesn't mean we won't see it again. We'll check up on it every now and then and see how it's progressing. Who knows what Connor will do with it. There's lots of roots on the bottom. Quite a fine mat of roots that I'm going to have to get separated because I've got to get my drainage screens out. There's one drainage screen. See if I can get the other out now. There it is. Oh, I think it ripped in half. Too many roots gone through it. Wow. Yeah, some good thick roots. It's grown well, this tree. I'll try and do as much root work as I can today. The secret to getting a good root base on your tree is to do as much root work as you can with each repotting and still have the tree live. So, you know, this tree has a lot of areas that need correction. So I'll do as much as I can. It does have some good areas on these roots, but it also has some very poor areas too, like that big thick one there. Now luckily, you know, it's developed some really good roots around the other sides of the tree that I may be able to do some major work on that thick one. Probably before I couldn't take that thick one off because it didn't have enough supporting roots on it. So sometimes you just got to do it slowly in stages to get your, you know, that goal achieved of a nice radial root system with everything in balance. Okay, that's getting there. I'm going to clean up all this soil here so I can see what I'm doing. I'll give the roots a spray and then we can start working on them, which will be exciting. That should do it. So the worst root on this, I think, is this big thick one coming off this side. It kind of comes off the trunk and it curls, and it doesn't blend in nice and smoothly with the trunk either. It kind of has a bit of a ridge here. There's a close-up view of that root, the way it comes out. So you can see there's kind of a ridge along here. It doesn't flow in nicely with the trunk. That may change over time, but for now it's not the greatest looking. So I've got to think, what can I do? The root, it comes down. If I trace a radial line, it comes out here, and then this is the closest root I have to, you know, maintaining that root in a radial direction. And then I would have to remove this part of the root on this side. So I'll try and do that. I'm going to have to take a big cut here, try and get that root in a more radial pattern so it doesn't kind of curve around. It'll also thin that root down so it's not so thick. So I'll take a lot of it away. Kind of a major surgery on this root, but it needs it. It's not a very good looking root. All right, so I'm going to start by coming in and taking off the end of this root. There's a kind of a natural division here that I can grow this part of the root out, which is nice and radial, fairly radial anyway, and get rid of this part. So here I go. Just got to get my cutters in here. There I go. All right, here I go. Like that. So gone is that bulbous part of this root, and I'm left with a root that's a little more radial in direction. It's still too big though, so next I've got to see if I can reduce that down. Just combing out some of the roots in the area to see what's going on here. I'm going to prune back that long root here, like that. Prune back these ones. There's one growing inside, I'll get rid of that. So the root's better, but it's still not very good. So I think I need to carve some out of here just to reduce the mass of that one root. I could cut some off the bottom maybe. I'll take a slice off the bottom like this. I'll reduce it a little more like that. And this will rot away and it'll heal over eventually. That's getting better. I'm going to leave it for now and see, how these other roots are looking. On the root base, there is this nice flow line coming down the trunk and down into the soil. But there's one root that kind of sticks up here and spoils that nice flow line. So I'm going to remove that. So right here, like that. So there's better flowing roots down below that. So it continues that line down into the soil. There's also one sticking up here. Get rid of that. So that's got that line fixed up, which looks pretty good actually. I like that. That's a good feature of the root base. There's another one sticking up here I'll get rid of. Another one over here. It's just a little too high and not flowing into the soil. So then I've got over here, from this flow line, I have a root that kind of comes out and then it goes straight down into the soil. And it curls underneath the tree here, if you see that. So a vigorous root, and the location is nice. It just that the fact that it goes straight down into the soil. So all I need to do is just prune that off, kind of here. I've got lots of feeder roots above my cut point. So off that comes. And that gets rid of that root growing underneath the tree. And then these will develop and continue that nice radial root system. There's a root coming off here that's getting quite strong and vigorous and needs to be pruned back, so I'll do that like that. Then there's a root over this side that's also getting very strong, so I'll reduce some of the roots coming off of that back further, taking a bit of vigor out of that root. And I'm looking for flow lines. It has one that doesn't flow here. I'll take that right off. There's one crisscrossing the root system here. I'll take that off. I don't want it all a big tangled mess in this area. So possibly even this thickest one could be reduced back. It's quite thick. I don't know if I should. I guess I should. I don't want it. I'm going to plant this higher in the soil. So my soil line might be about there. So yeah, I can take some of that off. There's also the remains of my drainage screen down here. There. I'll just take the ones that are going down vertically here off of it. It does have some good roots growing from the tip of that. Just if they were a little higher up, it would be better. I better do it. I better take some vigor out of that. So I'll prune it off up a little higher. Horizontal cut, like that. And that'll develop new roots coming off of the tip of that root there. So some of these other roots over here can be corrected to a radial direction. They're not too bad. There's the sirens. I will reduce them back. There's you know, a long root with no fine roots coming off of it, so I want ramification back further. So I'll reduce them back like that. This one too. Getting my root base a little more compact. Now, so everything's looking good, except I still don't like this root here. And I think that's probably going to be the front of the tree, so you can see that nice sweeping line and this root coming off this side. So I think just a little carving and I think this will be good. I think for the carving I can just use my branch pruners, so I'll just come in here and I'll just nibble away at it a bit. So coming in, just reducing the mass of that root down a bit. Like that. Some more off at the tip here. Some more off from the underneath. I think that's pretty good. It's got that root slimmed down. There's one root coming off here that's not very radial. I'm going to have to remove that. Something else will grow in a good direction. There's also a root under here that's going a funny direction. Now, let's just look underneath and see if there's anything that needs a bit of reduction here. Just take some of the roots growing down vertically off. Trim them back anyway. Just comb that out. I'm just trying to find the lowest point on the tree. Okay, so there's a few more roots I can take off here. Juice this one back, this one back. So that's got the root base pretty flat underneath. That's pretty good. I'll give the roots another misting just to keep them moist. I got to think about a pot now. I think the pot the tree was in was maybe a little small while the tree's in this development stage. So I think I can find a better pot, which means I'll have to go outside into the wind and cold and see if I can find a more suitable pot for it. So I'll do that now. I found a good pot outside. This pot was given to me by Lessig, and I've started many good trees in this pot. It's a good training pot. It's a very kind of porous clay, so it sucks out the excess moisture from the soil. It's deep, it's got drainage holes in the bottom, and it fits the tree really nicely. So I think this will be a perfect pot to develop that root base in. The pot was freezing cold when I brought it in, so I ran it under cold water at first, and then I slowly increased the temperature to bring it up to room temperature, so now it's nice and warm. So there's a look at the top view. You can see how the roots fit in there really nicely. I'll cut out some drainage screen for the bottom of the pot. There, that covers both holes quite nicely. And then I'll add a base layer of soil. I'll just build up a mound that I can place the tree on top of. Before I plant the tree, I just thought I'd show you the root base, what it looks like from all angles. So here's the back of the tree. So I'm coming around to the left side here, coming around to the front, and over to the right-hand side. So it's got a lot of good things happening. It's not the perfect radial root base, but I took a lot of steps today to kind of correct it and get it going in the right direction. So now I can plant the tree. All right, here I go. So this is the front of the tree. So I'll just place it on top of the pile, and I'll get my height correct. So I want all the roots into the soil, so it's got to come down a little lower. Maybe to about there. Next, I'll make sure all my roots are combed out, that they're nice and radial, that they're not tangled. Make sure they're flowing down nicely into the soil. Just comb them all out here. So the secret to getting a good root base is just to work on the roots every time you repot the tree. There's a crossing root there. Right here, it's going towards the other root, and I've got to take that off. There, that's better. Yeah, so just make sure all your roots are going down into the soil nicely and they're raked out. There's another one that's kind of going a bit of a funny direction here. There. Okay, the rest look good. I'll start filling it in with soil now. All right, here I go. I'll make sure the tree's nice and vertical. Then I'll work that soil into the root system. So right now that's a good planting height for the tree. You know, a finished planting height, but I want to put the soil up a little higher so it keeps the roots safely in the soil so they don't dry out. And then, you know, later on when the tree's growing really well, maybe midsummer, that surface soil can be raked away. So I'll just build up the soil level a little more. I ran out of soil, so I had to borrow some soil from the used bin. Okay, I think that will do it. It's up to a good level in the pot. So the next step will be to water the tree. You can see the water running out of the bottom of the pot now, pooling up in the corner here. I think that's got the tree underway as a bonsai. I have a lot of corrective work on the root system, and I can see potential for this root system and the trunk to develop into the future. And I'll eventually get a nice branch structure on it, and I think it'll become a nice tree over the next few years. I'll wait until the tree has recovered and is growing strongly before I give it to Connor. So it might be sort of spring or midsummer before I see him again. Yeah, I think he'll like it. I think it'll be a good tree for him to develop. When I'm working on a root system, I like to think of it as a mirror of what I want on the top of the tree. So I'm pruning the roots for direction, ramification, tight internodes, trying to prune one root, dividing into two, and then two into four, and four into eight, and so on. So, you know, basically the same rules apply to your roots as they do to the upper structure of your tree. And yeah, eventually you'll get a really nice root base on your bonsai. And that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.